Free and open source software is the foundation of what we do in the Linux world, and frankly, is the foundation of what is done in most of the tech world. Even in proprietary projects, you're often going to be using open source libraries. Now, when we say this term, we are often referring to the license the project is using. So, GPL v3, MIT, MPL, BSD3 clause, so on and so forth. These are a combination of free and open source licenses. And for the most part, this is a useful enough separation when talking about free and open source versus proprietary software. Now, this is not a video saying proprietary software is bad, everything should be free and open source. I might agree with that, but that's not the point that we're trying to talk about today. I want to talk about important distinctions within the FOSS world itself. So the other day, I came across this post. I think we should start separating the notion open source software and crowdsourced development. One should not imply another. For example, SQLite is open source, but not developed in a crowdsourced manner. Jumping over to the SQLite page, open source, not open contribution. SQLite is open source, meaning that you can make as many copies of it as you want and do whatever you want with those copies without limitation. But SQLite is not open contribution. In order to keep SQLite in the public domain and ensure the code does not become contaminated with proprietary or licensed content, the project does not accept patches from people who have not submitted an affidavit dedicating their contribution into the public domain. All of the code in SQLite is original, having been written specifically for use by SQLite. No code has been copied from unknown sources on the internet. Here's what SQLite is saying. Let's take a look at a regular FOSS project. Take KDE, for example. Let's go to, I don't know, frameworks and what's some random thing that probably has a bunch of people on it. Let's go Kcontacts. I have no idea. I didn't even check this one. Let's go to the history. So we have Nicholas Feller, Laurent Montel. Okay, maybe not many people work on this one. This was a bad example. Much better example here is Discover. Let's go to the history. We have someone called Gleb, Alex, we have Timothy, Nicholas, Marco, Nate Graham, and a bunch of other people all working on this singular project. And some of these people might be noteworthy within the KDE ecosystem, but let's go over to the merge requests. So right here, we go to merged, and you're going to see some familiar names. But if you scroll through this long enough, you're going to see people where this might actually be their first contribution into the project. They saw an issue with Discover, and they wanted to go and add something into that project. And anybody can do that. If you have an issue with KDE, whether it be Discover or any other component, and you want to go and patch that issue, or you want to go and add a new feature, you can make a merge request, and if that is doing the job correctly, if it's adding a new feature that people actually want within the project, that can be added into the code base. That can be merged into that component. Basically, the only barrier is writing good code and a KDE contributor agreeing that the code is good and merging that code into the project. And KDE operates under the assumption that every contribution made is compatible with the license of that component and compatible with the license of the project as a whole. That nobody's trying to poison the world with stolen proprietary code, that everybody is acting within good faith. And there is no requirement to sign your code away, to give all the rights to your code to the KDE EV or to that individual component. You still retain those rights. Now, there is an optional thing you can sign, but it's optional. You don't need to sign it. You can just contribute and that be the end of it. Now, this is not a bad situation. This is the way that most projects out there operate, and this has worked out surprisingly well. But this creates a situation where the barrier to entry is incredibly low. And for a large project like KDE or for a large project like GNOME, this is basically what you need to have to make it so the project is actually viable and components are actually being worked on without having to get massive external funding. And another thing is it makes it incredibly easy to onboard new developers, to bring new talent in who have a problem, have some sort of issue, and they have the solution for it, but nobody else is working on a solution they're the one that's gonna solve it. By having it be very easy for this to be done, anybody can get involved. Even if you don't have programming knowledge, even if you just want to go modify some documentation, that's super easy to do. This does come with some drawbacks. You have an unsure level of code quality where code quality is very dependent on the individual maintainers, those individual people with merge rights in KDE. If they're being very picky, if they're making sure everything is up to standard, yeah, it's going to be good. But sometimes you're going to let things slip through because there's a lot of merge requests being made. It's from new people that aren't trusted within the project, that understand how everything should be done. So it may not necessarily align with everything the project is trying to do. Also, because you're not requiring anyone to sign over the rights to their code, you're in a situation where you assume they're acting in good faith, but you're not entirely certain about the licenses. SQLite, on the other hand, puts a barrier, albeit not a massive one, in front of contributions. To contribute to SQLite, you don't just get to do so because you've written a commit that might do something useful. You have to say, I don't own the rights to this code anymore. This code belongs to the public domain. This is code that anybody can go and use. In many ways, this is similar to a CLA, a contributor license agreement, which is a document contributors will sign in some projects where you dedicate your rights to the organization or to the project or to the company running the code base. This does come with concerns where sometimes, a lot of the time, CLAs are used as a way to circumvent the terms of a license by making an individual or making an organization the sole owner of all of the open source contributions. This has led to many situations where a project is bought out or the owner has a change of heart and then it's relicensed into something source available or something proprietary, throwing the entire project into a storm, throwing away the entire community they built, and then basically going corporate with it. But in the case of SQLite, you're not dedicating your code to the organization that runs SQLite or a company that might purchase it in the future. You are dedicating it to the public domain, so it's a little bit different. You are dedicating your code to the fact that it's going to be open source. Now, somebody could come along and say, oh, I want to make a corporate version of this project, and that is something they can do, but it's something that anybody can do. But here's the thing. Even if you agree to dedicate your code to the public domain, there is still a high possibility that it's just not going to be accepted anyway. Adding on further, in order to keep SQLite completely free and unencumbered by copyright, the project does not accept patches. If you'd like to suggest a change and you include a patch as a proof of concept, that would be great. However, please do not be offended if we rewrite your patch from scratch. Even though you're willing to dedicate your code to the public domain, even though it is solving a problem, the project doesn't want to take any risk that the project is going to be poisoned in some way. It's going to bring in some copyright encumbered code, and that's going to cause a problem for them. They want to be extra certain that this project always belongs to the public domain, and to do so, your contributions, they're welcome, but they're probably not going to be accepted, at least in their initial form. Effectively, what is happening here is SQLite is saying, here's the code, you're free to fork it, you're free to do whatever you want with it, the code is open source. However, upstream has very strict regulations on what is going to be an upstream. So, if you want to do something cool with the project, hey, that's cool, send it to us and maybe we'll accept it. But probably not, because we are SQLite, we are not open to general contribution, we have a vision, we have a goal, and that is what we are going to do. Now, there are some projects that take this idea of being open source, but definitely not open contribution, considerably further. Take, for example, the NVIDIA Open GPU kernel modules. Notice there are 82 commits here, and if you look through these commits, each of them are individual version numbers. So these GPU kernel modules are open source, but they're not even being developed in an open source way. It's just every time a new version is made, that is released open source. This is not how most projects operate whatsoever. but it is still very much open source, just not in the way that you'd normally expect, and absolutely not open contribution. From what I can tell, the only commits in here that aren't just release numbers are minor documentation changes and things of that nature. Definitely nothing substantial, definitely no proper development work being done in public. Now, there are pull requests here, and sometimes the code is brought into the project, but it's not done so through the GitHub merging system, and it's always brought in during that next full release. Even though it's not normal, both the OpenGPU kernel modules and SQLite are both open source by every reasonable metric, and that's the point I was making earlier. These might both be open source, but these are a very different kind of open source than what you would see from KDE, what you would see from GNOME, what you would see from Hyperland, or basically most open source projects out there. And the term open source is certainly useful to refer to this collective when talking about general open source software, but within open source, it can be useful to make a distinction between the kinds of development being done, because they are not taking a democratic approach to development, a crowdsourced approach, an open contribution approach like most projects are, but they're still open source. And I think most people kind of internally know that these are different things, because if you've ever developed anything in an open source way, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you just don't want to deal with people. It's open source, people can go and fork it, they can go and download the code and do whatever they want to it, but even if people start making merge requests, you're not going to accept them, you don't care to deal with them because it's your project, you're the one who is developing it, you don't care that other people want to make changes to it. That's obviously done on a personal, individual level, but there's not necessarily anything wrong with doing that at a level of something like a SQLite, where it's a big established project, but you're not just accepting every single contribution that people try to make. And especially when you're dealing with complicated subjects, especially subjects that could lead to a lot of bike shedding, it may result in a better project to simply not let everybody get involved, unless they are entirely on board with your vision, just kind of doing your own thing. It's the idea of not having too many cooks in the kitchen. It's the idea where you don't want to have too many people trying to make decisions about what this project is doing. You're the decision maker, or a small group of people are the decision makers, and everybody gets on board with that, or they go do their own thing, they can fork the project, but the core project, the upstream project, this is the direction we're going, deal with it, or leave. And this might not be suitable for really large projects like GNOME and KDE, where there are just way too many components to maintain. You really couldn't have something of that scale and go and do so. Now, I know Baxter's going to say, oh, well, Hyperland's a great desktop. Yes, it is, but it's also considerably smaller than KDE. Yes, I know you can develop a compositor and some applications around it, but it's much smaller than the KDE, let's just be honest here. These big projects do still have a vision, do have a North Star that guides them, and this is something that has developed over time. But others may decide that that's not the route they want to go down. They want it to be open source, they want people to be able to fork it and do whatever they want to it, but they want to be entirely in control. And maybe there's some value in discussing these in a slightly different way. Open contribution versus closed contribution. Maybe that one doesn't sound that great. Maybe democratic development or something like that. But having some sort of term to describe this different kind of development, I think is useful. But what do you think? Do you think it's a giant waste of time? Do you want there to be more terms? Do you want to confuse the normies with having even more terms to use? That is honestly a big concern, because if something else became popular, oh my god, the discussions about what it means, maybe it's not worth it. But let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Liberapay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and my comments our open contribution.
Something like this.